The calculated invitation. The sleek, minimalist invitation materialized in Rowan Atkinson's inbox on a gray Tuesday morning, nestled between missives about classic car auctions and tentative inquiries from film studios. The Evelyn Ray Show, an in-depth conversation. Rowan, seated in his meticulously organized study, a surprising blend of engineering textbooks and first-edition P.G. Wodehouse novels, allowed himself a dry chuckle. Evelyn Ray, the high priestess of confrontational television, renowned for her surgical dismantling of celebrity egos and her uncanny ability to generate viral outrage. An in-depth conversation with Evelyn Ray was about as likely as Mr. Bean winning a Nobel Peace Prize. He knew the game. He leaned back, fingertips drumming softly on the arm of his leather chair, considering the implications. It wasn't about ratings for her anymore. It was about cultural relevance, about positioning herself as the arbiter of modern sensibilities. And he, Rowan Atkinson, master of a certain kind of meticulous, often silent, universally understood comedy, represented something archaic, perhaps, predictable, an easy target for her brand of manufactured controversy? Precisely. A small voice in his head whispered with amusement. She thinks I'm just the funny man with the rubber face. Predictable indeed. Meanwhile, across town in the gleaming steel and glass fortress housing the network studios, Evelyn Ray paced her office like a caged panther. Mark, her perpetually stressed producer, stood by a whiteboard plastered with flowcharts and target demographics. "The angle is solid, Evelyn," Mark said, tapping a marker against a picture of Atkinson looking particularly owlish. "He's comedy royalty, sure, but detached, aloof. His physical comedy, quaint, childish even, in the TikTok era. Blackadder, elitist Oxbridge humor. And the silence, he never weighs in on anything important. He's a dinosaur playing in his own private Jurassic Park." Evelyn stopped pacing, a predatory glint in her eyes. "Exactly, Mark. He embodies the problematic, privileged white male comedian who thinks he's above it all. We frame him as irrelevant, out of touch with the struggles and the discourse of the real world. We make his silence the story." She snatched a cue card from her desk. "The audience is seated. We've got the easily offended contingent, the social justice warriors ready to pounce, and enough genuine fans who'll feel betrayed when he inevitably says something wrong. The social media team has the hashtags ready. Hashtag Atkinson out of touch, hashtag comedy has evolved, hashtag silence is compliance." She smirked. "This isn't just an interview. It's an execution, broadcast live. Time for the old guard, with their harmless jokes, to be put out to pasture." Back in his study, Rowan Atkinson reread the invitation. He thought of the carefully constructed personas of television, the manufactured outrage, the relentless churn of the modern media machine. It was, in its own way, a rather fascinating, if exhausting, performance. A challenge, perhaps? An opportunity for a subtle counter-performance. With a decisive click of the mouse, he typed his reply, concise and polite. "Dear Miss Ray, I would be delighted to join you. Please suggest a suitable date. Sincerely, Rowan Atkinson." He hit send, a flicker of intellectual curiosity animating his features. The trap was set. But who, he wondered idly, was truly trapping whom? The ambush begins. The appointed day dawned crisp and clear. Rowan Atkinson arrived not on a flashy motorcycle or in a chauffeured limousine, but behind the wheel of a perfectly restored 1964 Aston Martin DB5, parking it with quiet precision in the designated VIP spot. He emerged, dressed in a simple but impeccably tailored dark suit, his expression one of mild, academic curiosity. He might have been arriving for a university lecture rather than a televised showdown. The usual studio buzz intensified as he walked through the corridors, a ripple of whispers following him. It's really him. He looks smaller in person. Wonder if he'll do the face. Crew members, accustomed to the practiced bonhomie or nervous energy of most guests, seemed unsure how to react to his polite, almost formal reserve. A young runner nearly dropped a tray of coffee, stammering an apology. Rowan merely gave a slight nod, his eyes briefly registering the near mishap before moving on. "Quite all right," he murmured. The studio itself was a masterpiece of psychological warfare disguised as set design. Cool blue lighting, sharp angles, cameras positioned slightly lower than usual to subtly loom. The audience seating was arranged to maximize the visibility of the plants Mark had strategically placed, individuals briefed to react with disapproval or outrage at key moments. Evelyn Ray's chair was positioned slightly higher than his, a classic power play. Every element was calibrated to project Evelyn's dominance and Rowan's supposed vulnerability. He took it all in with an unnervingly calm gaze as he was led to his seat. He noted the position of the cameras, the slight glare from the overhead lights reflecting off the polished floor, the almost imperceptible tension in the air. He adjusted his tie, crossed his legs precisely at the ankle, and waited. It felt, he mused, rather like waiting for the curtain to rise on a particularly elaborate, if potentially tedious, theatrical production. Evelyn Ray swept onto the set, radiating confidence, her smile a dazzling weapon. The applause sign flashed, and the audience responded with a wave of sound, enthusiastic from some, polite but reserved from others. The red light on the main camera blinked, signaling the start of the broadcast. "Rowan Atkinson," Evelyn purred, her voice a silken blend of admiration and condescension. "A true global phenomenon, an architect of laughter for decades. Welcome, welcome to the Evelyn Ray Show." She leaned forward, extending a perfectly manicured hand. Rowan met her handshake briefly, firmly. "Thank you for having me, Evelyn. It's an experience." A slight, almost ironic emphasis on the last word, easily missed by most, but perhaps not by Evelyn. "An experience," she echoed, sensing the nuance. "We certainly hope it will be a memorable one." She settled back into her slightly elevated throne. "Rowan, your career is extraordinary. Characters like Mr. Bean, Edmund Blackadder, they're iconic, instantly recognizable, but the world has changed so much since they first appeared. Comedy, entertainment, society itself, it's all in flux. Let's start there. How does a creator like you navigate such a rapidly shifting landscape?" Rowan tilted his head, a gesture that could be interpreted as thoughtful or evasive. "One navigates it, I suppose, much like one navigates traffic. With careful observation, occasional use of the indicator, and a firm belief that arriving safely is preferable to arriving quickly." A few chuckles rippled through the studio audience. Evelyn's smile didn't waver, but her eyes narrowed fractionally. "He's deflecting already," she thought. "Good. Let him build his ivory tower." The triple-pronged attack. Evelyn consulted her notes, projected discreetly onto a monitor only she could see. "Time to deploy the first wave. Careful observation is certainly key," she conceded, her voice smooth. "But observing the landscape today, many critics, especially younger ones, find the purely physical, almost silent comedy of Mr. Bean, well, dated, simplistic, lacking the socio-political commentary audiences now crave. Does that kind of apolitical comedy still have a place, or is it a relic of a less aware time? The word relic hung in the air, deliberately barbed. Rowan steepled his fingers, his gaze thoughtful, as if genuinely pondering the question. Ah, apolitical. A fascinating label. Is a beautifully crafted chair apolitical because it doesn't make a statement about tax reform? Is a piece of instrumental music apolitical because it lacks lyrics about social injustice? He paused. Comedy, at its core, often explores the human condition, our absurdities, our flaws, our shared vulnerabilities. Mr. Bean, perhaps, speaks to the universal experience of navigating a world that often feels too complex, too illogical. Is universality truly simplistic, or is it merely fundamental? He looked directly at her. And does relevance demand constant, explicit commentary, or can it reside in connection, in shared laughter across cultures and languages? The plants in the audience looked confused. Some of the genuine fans nodded appreciatively. Mark's voice crackled in Evelyn's earpiece. He's twisting it. Go for the elitism angle. Now. Evelyn pivoted smoothly. A compelling point about universality. But let's talk about your other famous creation, Blackadder. Brilliantly written, undeniably witty, but steeped in satire that often targets the lower classes, the less intelligent. Baldric, for instance. Critics argue it borders on intellectual snobbery, punching down from the lofty heights of Cambridge and Oxford. She smiled sweetly. Does that highly educated background sometimes create a disconnect? A perception of looking down one's nose? Rowan allowed a flicker of amusement to cross his face. Looking down one's nose? Heavens no. Blackadder, if anything, satirized the arrogance of the upper classes, their incompetence, their casual cruelty, often contrasted with the sheer, albeit misguided, survival instinct of those below them. Baldric wasn't mocked for being stupid. He was a commentary on the absurd, cunning plans of his supposed superiors. He leaned forward slightly. Satire, Evelyn, is a delicate instrument. It aims to puncture pomposity, wherever it resides. If recognizing idiocy across the social spectrum is elitist, then perhaps the definition of elitism needs revisiting. Or, he added, his voice dropping slightly, perhaps some find the mirror of satire reflects their own vanities a little too clearly. The audience buzzed. This wasn't defensiveness. It was intellectual fencing, and he was scoring points. Evelyn felt a prickle of irritation. He wasn't taking the bait. He was too controlled, too precise. Time for the final, most potent charge. Her voice took on a graver tone. Precision is certainly your hallmark, Rowan, which makes your silence on major global issues all the more conspicuous. We live in turbulent times. Social inequality, political division, environmental crisis. Countless artists use their platforms, their voices, to advocate, to protest, to engage, yet you remain largely silent. Why? Is it a deliberate choice? A lack of concern? Or she leaned in, delivering the intended blow? Is it simply easier, safer, to stay above the fray, entertaining the masses while the world burns? The accusation hung heavy, cowardice masked as detachment. The studio fell silent, waiting for the knockout. The wit, the wisdom, and the win. The weight of Evelyn's accusations settled over the studio. The camera zoomed in on Rowan Atkinson's face, searching for a crack in the calm facade. A flicker of anger, a hint of defensiveness. There was none. He simply sat there, absorbing the charge, his expression thoughtful, almost serene. The silence stretched, amplifying the tension. Mark's voice was frantic in Evelyn's earpiece. "He's stalling. Push him. Don't let him off the hook." But Rowan wasn't stalling. He was choosing his words with the same meticulous care he applied to crafting a comedic sequence. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm and measured, cutting through the strained silence. "Silence," he began softly. "It's often perceived as absence, an empty space. But isn't silence also the necessary counterpoint to noise? Isn't it the space where thought can actually occur?" He looked around the studio, making eye contact with several audience members. "This fray you speak of, Evelyn, it's become extraordinarily loud, hasn't it? A relentless barrage of opinions, accusations, pronouncements, often delivered with more heat than light." He returned his gaze to her. "You ask about responsibility. A fair question. But does responsibility always manifest as public declaration? Could it not also lie in ensuring one's own small corner of the world is tended with care? In focusing on one's craft, striving for excellence, hoping to offer something of value, perhaps laughter, perhaps a moment of reflection, rather than adding another strident voice to the already deafening chorus?" His tone wasn't preachy. It was genuinely questioning. "You've suggested," he continued, methodically ticking off points on his fingers, "that my comedy might be simplistic or dated, that my satire might be elitist, that my lack of constant public commentary is silence, bordering on cowardice or irrelevance." He paused, letting his summary hang in the air. "It seems the underlying thesis is that I don't conform, that I don't fit the prescribed mold of the modern, engaged, vocal celebrity." He leaned forward again, the intellectual curiosity in his eyes replaced by a sharper focus. "But tell me, Evelyn," his voice remained level, yet carried undeniable weight, "this relentless pressure for conformity, this insistence that everyone must adopt the approved opinions, speak in the approved manner, engage on the approved platforms, isn't that the truly stifling force? Isn't the demand that complexity be flattened into hashtags, that nuance be sacrificed for viral sound bites? Isn't that the genuine threat to meaningful discourse? Isn't that," he held her gaze, "the ultimate form of elitism, the attempt to impose a single, narrow definition of relevance and responsibility onto everyone?" The shift in the room was palpable. It wasn't just silence now. It was stunned silence. The audience was utterly captivated. Evelyn Ray, for the first time in her career, looked genuinely flustered. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The producers in the production hub were in chaos. "Cut! Cut to commercial!" Mark yelled, but the director seemed frozen, mesmerized by the unfolding scene. Evelyn scrambled to recover, forcing a brittle laugh. "That's quite a performance, Rowan. A masterclass in deflection. But you still haven't answered the fundamental question. In a world demanding seriousness, grappling with real problems, this is mere silliness truly enough?" It was a last, desperate attempt to regain the narrative, to frame him as frivolous. Rowan Atkinson regarded her for a long moment. Then a slow, knowing smile spread across his face. Not Mr. Bean's gurn, not Blackadder's sneer, but something uniquely his own, intelligent, amused, and utterly confident. "Ah, seriousness," he repeated softly, as if savoring the word. He let the pause hang, drawing every eye in the room, every viewer at home, towards him. Perhaps, his eyes twinkled with unmistakable wit, perhaps silliness is more profound than seriousness gives it credit for. The viral punchline and the fallout. The words landed, not with a bang, but with the resonant clarity of a perfectly struck bell. A beat of stunned silence, then an eruption. Laughter, applause, gasps of admiration rolling through the audience. It was spontaneous, uncontrollable, a genuine wave of appreciation that swept away the manufactured tension Evelyn Ray had so carefully constructed. She sat there, momentarily paralyzed, her practiced smile finally collapsing into a mask of barely concealed fury and disbelief. The floor director frantically signaled for a commercial break, and this time the feed cut abruptly, leaving viewers worldwide staring at an ad for detergent, the echo of Rowan Atkinson's final words still hanging in the air. The internet exploded, instantly. Before the commercial break was even over, smartphones were alight, fingers flying across keyboards. The clip, Rowan's calm demolition of Evelyn's arguments culminating in that killer line, went hyper-viral. Silliness is profound rocketed to the top of trending lists globally, eclipsing Evelyn's pre-planned Atkinson out of touch. Atkinson owns, hashtag Evelyn Ray exposed, hashtag masterclass in wit, followed close behind. Social media became a highlight reel of the exchange. Memes sprouted like mushrooms after rain. Rowan Atkinson calmly sipping tea while Rome burned around Evelyn Ray, his face superimposed onto chess grandmasters checkmating opponents. The phrase, "Perhaps silliness is more profound," emblazoned over images of philosophers and kittens. TikTok users created skits reenacting the moment, often ending with a deadpan delivery of the final line in response to everyday dramas. News outlets scrambled, abandoning their usual cycles to cover the interview. Headlines screamed, "Atkinson versus Ray, wit triumphs over woke warfare." Comedy icon silences controversy queen. Did Rowan Atkinson just save nuance? Think pieces analyzing the exchange flooded online journals. Some defended Evelyn, weakly arguing she was asking tough questions, but they were drowned out by a chorus praising Atkinson's intellectual dexterity, his calm under pressure, and his defense of art that doesn't wear its politics on its sleeve. Critics lauded his elegant evisceration and his ability to turn an ambush into a public lecture on the poverty of modern discourse. Even comedians who normally traded in political barbs tipped their hats, acknowledging the sheer skill of his performance. Backstage at the Evelyn Ray show, the atmosphere was glacial. Mark frantically fielded calls from enraged network executives. Evelyn, locked in her dressing room, reportedly threw a lamp. Her attempt at damage control later that week, a stiff, pre-recorded statement talking about robust debate and suggesting her questions were taken out of context by online mobs, was met with widespread derision and accusations of playing the victim. She lost the game. Now she's blaming the players. One popular commentator tweeted, garnering hundreds of thousands of likes. The real-world consequences were swift. 3 major sponsors, spooked by the negative PR and the overwhelming public sentiment siding with Atkinson, publicly withdrew their support from the Evelyn Ray show, citing a need to align with more positive messaging. Viewership numbers plummeted. An emergency meeting was convened at the network. The agenda simply titled, "The Future of the Evelyn Ray Show." Her reign as the untouchable queen of confrontational TV was effectively over. A few days later, paparazzi swarmed Rowan Atkinson as he left a quiet London bookstore, clutching a newly purchased biography of Buster Keaton. Microphones were thrust in his face. "Mr. Atkinson, your reaction to the fallout? Any message for Evelyn Ray? Do you feel vindicated?" He stopped, regarded the clamoring press pack with a weary sigh, adjusted his glasses, and offered a simple, almost apologetic smile. goodness," he murmured, his voice barely audible above the din. "Such a fuss." He paused, considering. Perhaps the takeaway is simply this. One hopes for more careful thought, less reflexive shouting. On all sides. He gave a polite nod, navigated his way to his waiting Aston Martin, and drove off, leaving the media frenzy behind. Naturally, that clip also went viral. The Evelyn Ray show was officially put on indefinite hiatus 6 weeks later, a quiet cancellation buried under other news. Evelyn Ray had attempted to orchestrate the public takedown of a comedy legend she deemed irrelevant. Instead, she exposed the brittleness of her own platform and inadvertently platformed a masterclass in intelligent restraint. Rowan Atkinson, without raising his voice or seeking confrontation, had proven that true influence doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it delivers the perfect, quiet punchline, leaving seriousness itself looking rather silly.